right, everyone, let's dive into some relationship red flags today, specifically for the guys out there. We've got a YouTube video by a therapist, Lise Leblanc, and an online article about red flags. So kind of tiptoeing into a minefield here. But honestly, who wouldn't want a heads up?
That's a great way to put it. It's really all about being prepared so you can make, good choices.
Exactly. So first up, both sources talk about emotional volatility. Leblanc talks about women who use terms like crazy to describe themselves and have dramatic past relationships. Plus, those unpredictable mood swings. Sounds kind of like emotional whiplash.
Yeah, it definitely raises some red flags. Everyone has emotions, but healthy relationships need stability and consistency too.
Right. Leblanc uses this analogy of the unicorn zone, finding a woman who's, gorgeous and always calm. It's like finding a unicorn. But then she asks, do you really want someone who's totally emotionless?
It's a good point. We don't want robots. It's about finding that balance, expressing emotions in a healthy way.
Yeah, for sure. Healthy communication is key. Okay, so emotional stability, check. Next up is control issues. LeBlanc calls this the micromanager. Wants to control everything. Who you're friends with, what you eat.
Yeah, it can be exhausting. And you end up losing your independence, like you're walking on eggshells.
Totally. And LeBlanc has this metaphor like being trapped in a shrinking box. With every, controlling behavior, the walls just close in a little bit more.
It's a powerful image. Shows how control can be so subtle.
Yeah, it sneaks up on you. She also talks about it like waves eroding a beach. Might not seem like much at first, but over time, the whole landscape changes.
Exactly. It's gradual but powerful.
Right, so we've got volatility, control issues. Now for red flag number 3, entitlement. Both sources mention women who just take their partners for granted, expecting to receive without giving anything back.
Yeah, like a one-way street. It's all about balance and reciprocity.
Right. LeBlanc shared this story about a guy who was just totally drained from providing for his family, worked long hours, came home tired, and then, just got complaints.
It really shows how entitlement plays out in real life.
For sure. So I think this is a good point to pause. We've covered emotional volatility, control, and entitlement. What do you thought so far?
It's important to remember that these are just, potential red flags, not a way to judge people. It's about awareness and making good choices.
Absolutely. Self-awareness is key. Now, LeBlanc brings up the serial monogamist.
Yeah.
The woman who jumps from one relationship to the next. What do you think about that one? Is that a red flag or just, a different style?
It's a good question. It's not about judging someone's past, but you got to understand the pattern, right? Is it a fear of being alone? Or maybe they can't handle a long-term thing?
Right. Or maybe they just idealize people and they get disillusioned. LeBlanc actually warns about being the exception, even if she says you're different from all her exes.
Yeah, you got to be realistic. Past behavior can be a good predictor. Not saying it's always the case, but
you got to watch out for those patterns. Okay, so moving on to the last red flag from both sources. This one's kind of sensitive, but important. It's about unwillingness to address personal issues.
Yeah.
Especially mental health or addiction.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's important to be supportive, of course, but you also have to know your limits. You can't force someone to change.
Right, you can't pour from an empty cup. LeBlanc's advice was pretty straightforward. Are you willing to help someone who won't help themselves?
It's a good question to ask yourself. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step back.
Protect yourself, yeah. So the article we mentioned actually has a bunch of other red flags.
It does, yeah.
What are some of the ones that stood out to you?
Well, one is definitely isolation. When they try to separate you from your friends and family, it's about control,
Yeah, they're trying to create their own little world.
Exactly.
The article also mentioned narcissism, which seems to be a big thing these days.
It's definitely more talked about. Narcissism can be really tough in relationships.
Yeah.
Because there's no empathy, and they always need admiration.
It's like a bottomless pit, right?
Yeah, you can never give enough.
And then there's gaslighting.
Yeah.
That one's just scary.
Gaslighting is really messed up. They try to make you doubt your own reality, like you're going crazy.
It's manipulative and really damaging. And then there's, defensiveness, suspicion, anger issues. The list goes on.
It's a lot, for sure.
But it's good to be aware of these things. So what can our listeners do to protect themselves?
Well, the first thing is to take your time. Get to know the person before you jump into anything serious.
Yeah, don't rush it.
Pay attention to how they treat other people, their friends, family, even strangers.
It's all about those little things, like how they treat a waiter or talk about their ex.
Exactly. Those things can tell you a lot.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
If something seems off, just ask.
Communication is so important.
Absolutely.
And if those red flags keep popping up, don't be afraid to walk away.
You deserve to be in a healthy relationship.
A relationship where you're respected and valued. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's your final message for our listeners? So much to think about, right?
It is, but it's good stuff to know. It's all about making those smart choices.
Exactly. So we know what to watch out for. But what about what we, actually want in a relationship?
Oh, that's huge. You got to know your non-negotiables, the things you just, can't compromise on.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement.
Yeah.
And forget about what's really important.
Absolutely. You deserve someone who, meets your needs.
Someone who respects you and values you.
Exactly. And remember, these red flags aren't about, judging women. It's about understanding people and making healthy choices for yourself.
Yeah, taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts for our listeners?
I'd say knowledge is power. Right. You know these red flags now. You know what you want. You've got the tools to build a good relationship.
And don't forget, you're worthy of love and happiness. Don't settle for anything less.
Well said.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope you learned some stuff and feel empowered. Until next time, take care.